I'm WG, it's day 3 of the SERENIEL release, and still the biggest question on people's minds is, okay, what kind of build am I chasing on SERENIEL? Where am I meant to play? What items should I get? Which epiphanies have crystallized themselves to be the strongest? That is exactly what we'll be covering in today's video, and then potentially tomorrow or the day after we'll have a specific look at a E0 SERENIEL and a bit more of like a team focused showcase. So, without further ado, let's get straight into things and let's open up with my current SERENIEL. So, my current SERENIEL, as you can see, we made it to 60% crit chance and we have a 192% crit damage. This is the current gear, but we won't really be talking about gear as much, but I'm still a firm believer in the 4-piece, 2-piece combination. And if you're wondering how we got here, the average is pretty much 4% crit chance on all pieces, combined with some crit damage and some attack. So once again, we've now done already a lot of runs for SERENIEL. As you can see here in terms of SaveData, all of these are completed runs. And yeah, she is still E0, has been tested A0, so everything I'm going to tell you is just as viable. So the thing that crystallized itself the most is the, you could say, emergence of Divine Epiphany homing laser hunting. Is it something you have to do? No, absolutely not. Is it something you can do if you're looking for that prime, for that peak SERENIEL deck? Absolutely yes. In particular, there is 2, maybe 3 epiphanies that would be considered pretty darn good. The weakest of the 3 godly ones would probably be the 30% damage increase. And then the 2 stronger ones, with one of them being incredibly strong, is, for example, the 2 vulnerable to the target, allowing you to apply 2 stacks of vulnerable every time you use this homing laser, or the, you could say, big price chase version if you're looking for something to completely grind out. Let's see if I can show you the deck proper. That is the Divine Epiphany with 1 AP. What that means is that every single time this card gets used, this effect for the Godly Epiphany also triggers. So that means you can either play the card to get the benefit, like 1 AP, then you ravage the target, it comes back to your hand, so now you have 2 AP, and then also you have something like the Pale Shooting Star, which can activate homing lasers, and activating cards once again triggers the Divine Epiphany as well. The same will, in terms of like multi-triggering cards and multi-usage, is also true for Plasma Missile. Standard Plasma Missile and the Plasma Missile First Epiphany have in common that they trigger their card twice. It's not an extra hit, it's an extra activation, meaning whatever Divine Epiphany you have on this, be it draw or attack, draw or AP, is going to get triggered multiple times. And that is pretty much the way that goes. So we have that, for example. Those are like the bigger things to come out of this whole situation. But let's for once again go through all these epiphanies and talk a bit about them in detail. So we're going to just speed run the homing lasers. Let's start with the, at the moment, considered best one. Yes, it only gives 1 afterglow, meaning you never be able to build afterglow stacks, but it has incredible consistency, and that is because it moves into your hand at the start of the turn. Important to note here, that is also true for your turn 1. So what that means is, if you have this epiphany, you can have the following happen. You enter into your fight, straight up, nothing else, and every single one of these epiphanies is going to get drawn before you do your turn draw, and then you get your 5-turn draw, meaning that you can never draw into them. They always just get drawn for you at the start of your turn, and they don't influence your further draw. So for example, this is our turn 1 with this epiphany. So that's the homing laser 4th epiphany, and it just has, incredible utility, you could say. The guarantee, especially with, for example, the 1 AP, you're guaranteed to get 4 AP. If you have this 4 times, you can play him out, and then you break the target, you get him back, you get another 4 AP. That's kind of the way it goes. And then this one here at the end of the day is just straightforward. It just creates more homing lasers, makes the pale shooting star, the purple card, more effective, especially if you have it E1, because you can then just trigger more cards. And then these two are the cards with the only real drawbacks. This is also, again, incredibly solid, just a whole bunch of Afterglow, where also important to note about Afterglow is Afterglow triggers per hit instead of per card, meaning that the more Afterglow you have, the more hits you can boost with the +1 tenacity damage. So the only drawback for this one is not it's at least the highest damage output, because it hits twice if the target is in a ravaged state or gets ravaged with this, but it doesn't have any Afterglow. So if you want to use the leftmost homing laser, you'll have to get your tenacity damage, your Afterglow stacks from other sources more reliably, like for example copying or having multiple shining cores. And that's kind of what holds this one back a little bit. And then for the rightmost homing laser, what holds this one back a bit more is the fact that it is missing this important on ravage or at the start of the turn move to hand. The same is also, I guess, true with the middle one as well. So you have to draw into those, and you're not getting them back when you break something, which is, I guess, being a bit balanced with them having, you could say, generally stronger effects. So that is the homing missile. And then for the plasma missile, for the homing laser, and then for the plasma missile, you still have the strongest in the 2 instinct plus 60% damage, just more damage for all your homing lasers. Instinct weakness meaning type effectiveness, meaning more damage, meaning more tenacity damage. And then you just have the other solid options in the multi-copy, or something that's been gaining a bit in popularity right here is the big damage burst that you can gain out of a plasma missile, getting that extra damage based on tenacity bar, or this one here as well, which has the benefit of double triggering whatever epiphanies you have on it, or even just the base version with, for example, 1 draw and 1 AP or whatever, because these cards, they just trigger twice. And then this one here, honestly, it's just a solid one. It makes your deck smaller and it gives you an extra amount of damage at the end of your turn. Then here for the Shining Core, this is still by far the chase card. It is incredibly strong. You're guaranteed to start your turn with it. It's 2 homing lasers, and every time you ravage, it's 2 more. It's just a net gain. It also removes itself out of your deck, meaning it thins your deck, increases your chances of you drawing into whatever you want to draw into. And then also the Shining Core X Epiphany. You already heard a bit about this divine chasing of multiple homing lasers and getting more AP. This works together with the Shining Core, because if you have a whole bunch of AP, you can spend a whole bunch of AP on this Shining Core to get more to continue, but it still is by no means the most reliable. And then you again have still the incredible flexibility of the Shining Core, where you could then, for example, make up for the bad homing missile, the first one, the drawback of not having any Afterglow. And then these ones are just honestly straightforward, straight gains, play them out, get more homing lasers, and succeed. And then for Cobalt Light right here, the main issue with Cobalt Light, the left one, is you have to ravage with this card. This card itself has to be the one to ravage, otherwise it won't get the cost decrease. But if you can manage that, and especially if you're playing a longer fight, you will be able to get this card down to a 0 cost, and doing 4 times the highest amount of base damage out of all of them, if you noticed, as well as 1 tenacity bar per hit at 0 cost, is absolutely incredible. And then for the other versions, we have this one, which is the most amount of damage possible, most amount of damage potential, so long as you just have a bunch of homing lasers. This one, again, also requires you to pay attention to the break bar and break the bar with this card, so that you turn a 4-hitter into an 8-hitter. And it does have the benefit of always being type effective, so another 25% damage multiplier. And then here you just have more card creation, very effective against multiple enemies, not as great in single target boss fights. And then here you have the, just a retained synergy card. You'll also be able to find similar patterns as what we described in the Great Rift rankings, like you can see right here. Somebody using the 1 AP Epiphany, I think it's the rank 2 guy at the moment, with the 1 AP, allowing her to double as a AP generator and also absolute damage beast. And then we can also just go to the number 3 guy right here, and we are going to see something similar in that you have the Ravage, Destroy, the incredible damage here, some Afterglow, plus also AP gen with getting to your hand at the start of your turn, as well as also, again, another Destroy hit. Because in Great Rift, at least, which we also see in deck number 1, it is very important for you to take advantage of the enemy being broken, and you do still get the biggest damage increase out of a homing laser like this. You'll find similar things again in Great Rift, but what truly stands out this Great Rift season is going to be, or has to be, the use of Selena and Selena's ability to recharge the Ravage state of the enemy, overall allowing you to break the enemy more times, which counters the mechanic, makes the card that he puts into your deck cost nothing, while also allowing you to get even more homing lasers back into your hand. So that is, at least as of this moment, after 3 days, the meta strat go-to way of getting a high score. And you can also see that the on Ravage or a turn start move to hand Epiphany is getting favored quite a bit. So now that we have all of this out of the way, just again as a little bit like a update due to me forgetting like a 30-second part in the last video. If you haven't seen it yet, you can now check what type of card a card is by just clicking on the card and looking into the top left, where it, for example, tells you that the homing laser L is a unique card. And then the best example of this is if you go to, for example, Luke, click on any of his bullet, it tells you is a common card. So potential priority for SERENIEL really at the end of the day is just going to be unique card, crit chance, crit damage, but also the unique stat potential in the top right. So now that you know all about this SaveData gearing, anything, stuff like that, where exactly do you go if you want to make this happen? So overall, you have to have, you have to kind of decide what approach do you want to take. Do you want to completely super min max hyper grind for the right homing laser with the right Divine Epiphany, or do you just want to build a more broad deck? Do you want to have more options during your run? What exactly is it that you're looking for? Because that is very important in determining how much save data do you actually need. So, for example, if you wanted to build a deck like this, which contains 4 homing lasers with a Divine Epiphany, these are going to, at minimum, already just from the Divine Epiphanies, run you 80 points. And the majority of points in this deck also come from this Divine Epiphany multi-copy scenario right here. You can see, apparently, we do also have another one here. So, these decks like this are only possible in 2 places right now. The only places you can get a deck like this is going to be in Laboratory 0 through the use of the Mutant Sample event, which gives you a cost-free remove, which means you can use that on one of your basic attacks, so you don't have to pay any save data cost, freeing up a massive amount of save data space, while also having the ability to play reliably at tier 13, so 160 save data max, or tier 14, so with Nightmare 170 save data max. Or if you're tired of Blue Pot, if you're tired of the Seasonal Chaos, you can also get this done in Blue Pot. For reference, the deck you've seen on screen for a bit of time already is possible on Blue Pot. So, that's because I got it on Blue Pot. A dumb way of saying things. So, now that we have this out of the way, let's actually talk about gear and where you want to go, right? If you want to make a divine build and if you don't want to lose a leg and an arm and your sanity, do it in lab 0. The highest chance to get a removal event to actually get the space, while then also having the then the chance to also go for that Divine Epiphany, get those copies, but it will be harder to get the 4 copies total. But at least you then also have access to some good weapons, some good items. And yeah, this is very important for all of you. If you want to build a multi-deck copy, or even if you want to add in neutral cards, if you add in forbidden cards, if you want to do all that stuff, keeping in one basic attack is a pretty darn good idea. The simplified version is remove 1 basic attack, it costs you 20, remove 2, it costs you 50, remove 3, it costs you 100. By keeping in 1 pulse fire, you save yourself 50 save data points, or 30 save data points if you remove the 3rd basic through the use of a mutant sample, for example. So it's just the ability to, keep it like this. Honestly, it is good value. It's 1 cost, does damage, and also has a chance to create a homing laser. So if you can get an additional homing laser while keeping in a pulse fire, that is advised. So let's talk about the options one by one. If you're aiming for that absolute peak deck, then by all means lap 0 is your best place. And the items you should be looking out for on lap 0 are going to be the following. So right here, you will always want to get the Amorphous Cube. You can just get that from the Delang shop. Then weapon-wise, the Foggy Crystal Ball from the final boss. Chess piece, the Rocket Adorned Cape. If you encounter the dragon, it is an incredibly good chess piece. The same is true for this chess piece that you can get from the final boss as well as a drop. Or from the Delang shop or random events, the Mutant Predator Spike to give you the damage increase if you have more cards. And then you also, if you can, for example, can find the Wings of Freedom, which can give you the up to 30% damage increase so long as you get hit, as well as also access to the Emblem of an Exceptional Entity, which is a slightly better Amorphous Cube with a couple extra stats to get, but it is overall better. And then the last chase would be encountering Cthulhu, encountering Senectu, Senectus, which I think is his real name. And the way you do that is you just play on Nightmare difficulty and you pray to high heavens that he invades your fight without killing you, right? So that in particular is lap 0, kind of your approach there, where you would then use the mutant sample to swap out a card, and those were all the items you'd really be looking for. And then in terms of neutral cards, or in terms of forbidden cards, the forbidden cards most worthy to pick up if you can afford the 20 save data cost are going to be the Portrait of Fury, so you can add extra card draw to your Sereniel, or the Ecstasy of Violence, which is just a solid DPS option all around, Right, so this is the point where my past self would have told you Ecstasy of Violence is going to be able to use up 4 Afterglow stacks to do 4 bits of tenacity damage, but that isn't actually quite true. Let me show you an interesting Afterglow interaction. So, Afterglow, we apply ourselves 3 Afterglow right here. You can see we have 3 Afterglow. We use the Cobalt Light. It's going to do its tenacity damage, but our Afterglow also only goes down by 1, as well as us also dealing 1 tenacity damage more. So now the same interaction, but let's break the enemy first. So if during the Cobalt Light or during any multi-hit attack the enemy breaks, what is going to happen is it's actually going to do still its 4 hits, but as you can see, we lost 4 Afterglow, and the reason for that is that every single one of these hits consumed the plus 50% damage instead of the 1 tenacity damage, because there was nothing to tenacity. So it's a bit of a more interesting interaction, but a bit on the, I guess, a bit worse side, maybe a bit on the balancing side, because imagine if you would gain plus 50% to the whole card from just 1 Afterglow stack, so that's something to keep in mind. Being a good source of damage, the Confiscation as a card itself if you have a forbidden card in your deck, and then the Eternal Hunger you can put on your Sereniel specifically under the condition that you have already earned yourself, let's see where it is, like either you have a way to put the Eternal Hunger into your deck with somebody outside like a Nia, or you obviously earned yourself the Precision Aim card already. And if you were wondering where to get that, it is going to be through the exploration of the Instinct Planet Twin Star Shadow. If you get to level 25, which I'm currently on my way there, you can then get this beautiful card, which is Hunter and Ranger exclusive, meaning it fits on SERENIEL, and then you can use it to deal damage, draw one at a 0 cost, and then also put one card from your hand onto the top of the draw pile, meaning it will be the next drawn card, where you then select Eternal Hunger, so you can draw it again for the 1 AP for the 1 draw, and that is pretty much what you're looking out overall there in terms of cards. So now, as we already briefly discussed, if you're tired or you just don't want to play Lab 0, then your only option of getting a 4 Divine deck, realistically speaking, is going to be Blue Pot and getting the Meat event. There's a Butcher event that gives you a similar effect to the Mutant Sample, where you can get another card transform plus remove. But if you're not looking for these 4 Divine Chase cards, which you absolutely do not have to, SERENIEL doesn't need 4 Divine Chase cards for it to be a good deck, then my favorite planets to play are still Lab 0, because you can just get a good chance of getting some good cards, some good weapons, even with the final hidden boss allowing you to do another shop visit, allowing you to also potentially get even more chances at Epiphanies. But in planet order, it probably goes Twin Star Shadow as my favorite, then the Foretold Ruins, and then the City of Mist. Now, let's talk a bit about the reasons of the whys and the hows. And that is, on the Twin Star Shadow, you can find a bunch of really fancy items. So these items, for example, include, let's see, they should start any second now, include this item right here, which you can use as a weapon, which increases the damage amount of attack cards with the cost of 1 or less by 25%, meaning it includes all your homing lasers, and if you can find a way to reduce the Cobalt Light or the Shining Laser Epiphany down to 1, includes those as well. This Twin Swords of Great and Lesser Evil, which increases the damage amount by 30% against targets in a ravaged state, which should just drop from you defeating the final boss and getting a bit lucky with it. Then also this weapon right here, which just gives you a straight up 20% crit damage buff, which if you just combine it with an amorphous cube can lead to some incredible crit numbers. And then also right here, the Pulsating Egg, which also again can be acquired as a final boss drop, which is one of the strongest rings in the entire game, in just giving you 15% attack and a 10% max HP increase to your unit. And that does also remind me of the fact that if you are looking for a weapon and you cannot get the Cthulhu weapon, which happens really often, then this weapon by no means is a bad option, giving you plus 10% damage to all your homing lasers, or the if you can somehow reduce the cost of Pale Shooting Star or Cobalt Light to those as well. So that is the Bug Planet, and also this Bug Planet is an absolute breeze to play through. You just run SERENIEL, you run a Kalip, you run a Mika, and you're going to be in good hands. And then we have ourselves the Foretold Ruins. The Foretold Ruins themselves, once again, just the strength of having an easy copy event, having just being a different venue, and also having a singular event. It's an event where there is a giant robot, and into that robot are stabbed 2 swords. In this event, you can earn yourself this weapon right here, which is almost, as you should notice, pretty damn similar to the Cthulhu weapon, in that the Cthulhu weapon gives 18% attack and this one only gives 15%, but getting this one is way more realistic than getting your hands on the Cthulhu weapon. So that is the main draw for the planet as a whole, and then you can potentially find some value in other cards like this right here. But overall, or even this one here, increase, if the enemy is alone, increase damage by 30%, a 30% damage multiplicative, which can be incredibly strong during boss fights, right? During, for example, the Great Rift. So just having like the Eye of Punisher, as well as also then the Singing Sword on 1 could give you an incredibly good base of items. So in general, out of these 3 planets, farming those, because the reason why we didn't really talk about the Void Planet that much is because the Void Planet is pretty similar in terms of drops to what you can get from yeah, from what you can get in Lab 0, with also it being void focused, with void bosses a bit more single target focused. So yeah, that's pretty much just that. And yeah, I guess as a last thing, we can have a look a bit at the save data that I created, and just so you can get a bit of an idea of how my decks look. So this is the save data we made today. One of the strongest SERENIEL save datas I have by far. And then let's just go through them in a row and kind of talk about them. So you've already seen this one just has a good weapon. It has the Ecstasy of Violence. It has the move card. And then we have ourselves the selected distinct homing laser upgrade, so that we can pick whatever we need, like for example moving them all into our hand or creating some in the draw pile, while also having a bunch of homing lasers being created from the plasma missile, as well as a pale shooting star. Keep in mind, pale shooting star as a copy target becomes increasingly more valuable the stronger your homing lasers are, because it activates your homing lasers. And also once you get to E1 SERENIEL, this card actually activates 5 homing lasers instead of just 3, making it even more valuable. And then here, this deck is something you can forget about. It was just more of a during the time when plasma missile was a bit bugged. This I just mainly made that for that reason, so that's why we're kind of skipping on it. Here it's just a simple divine copy of a homing laser, which is just a standard homing laser with the ability to attack weakness. Here the damage based on decreased tenacity bar, and just the unique card Shining Core upgrade in a very compact, very small, very simple deck, as well as a copy of the pale shooting star. What we then have here is a bit more of a fancy one. Once again, we kept in the basic because we needed the save data space. We have 1 confiscation and 1 forbidden ecstasy of violence to allow us to card draw. Our weapon of choice was the mutant predator spike combined with the amorphous cube and the fragment of the void from the boss, which can allow us to fine tune our turn 1 hand. And these card draws also count for reducing the cost of ecstasy of violence on their own. And then, as you might have already noticed, we also have you could call it, I guess, a neutral epiphany, and that is Cobalt Light. Cobalt Light at 3 cost can actually have some really ridiculous looking 3 epiphanies due to it being so expensive. So for example, this is you could say standard, a neutral epiphany, and it's actually +2 draw. So we pay 3, draw 2, have a duplicate version of that. We have the same Shining Core unique / initiation upgrade, and then also the double plasma missile for the weakness and the damage increase, combined with the cost reduced plasma missile version, because we copied the plasma missile before we epiphanied it, which led to these 2 different versions. And then here we have ourselves the Forbidden Eternal Hunger, so we could, for example, run this deck alongside a Nia, and Nia could be cycling this Forbidden Hunger, or we could at some point in the future even run this with, let's say, a Veronica, if I then get my hands on precision aim. And yeah, pretty much just that. And then as you can see right here, we have ourselves the double Destroy Epiphany twice, but also a double Shining Core, meaning we can pick 2 different homing lasers to work together in this deck to make up for the lack of afterglow on these homing lasers. And then so long as we, for example, go to E1, we can then activate these powerful double hitters, as well as the homing lasers we're going to create through these Shining Core epiphanies, giving a lot of value to the pale shooting star as a whole. And then in general, this one is one of my most frustrating decks. We have the triple destroy card, a non-epiphany plasma missile, which is a bit unfortunate. And then here we have ourselves again the unique creation card, some extra activation on hit. This card really hits really hard. It really does. And then, for example, here we have the damage increase with the move to hand on turn start, as well as triple Shining Core. So 2 unepiphanied ones and a epiphanied one with the create 2, as well as also once again found ourselves a forbidden ecstasy of violence. So yeah, and then here you can see we tried our hand at the 1 AP copy version. We did only find it once, but we for that in exchange also, I guess, found a plasma missile And as we have a quite nice setup in Amorphous Cube and the Intellect of Darkness. And that sure is kind of all the runs I've done for a bit. And yeah, I think that kind of encapsulates everything in terms of where to farm. Hopefully also enough information on the how and the whys and the whats. And as always, we see each other in the next one. Peace!